Hi, JX here from New Leadership. I've got Cathie Crampton speaking with us today about all things leadership from the sunny town of Canberra. Is it sunny? I hope it's sunny down there.
It actually is sunny, and finally I'm in short sleeves. Apparently, I was even at a meeting this morning where the person said to me that they were freezing, and I said, "Look, I've managed to dress as if I'm in Brisbane, but I'm actually in Canberra, so it's warming up." Yes.
I love it. So for those watching, give us a little bit of a background about where you've come from and where you are at this point in time.
Thank you. So full background is I started in teaching, went through to recruitment and HR and operations roles in a consulting firm in Sydney, and then from there went into real estate. So in my period of real estate, I've worked with most of the major brands, always in that property management lane. And predominantly in leadership roles. So I started as a business owner and then went in running businesses for other groups, including the McGrath Group, so Shane Smolin, then Bell Property, of course, Harcourts, and the last 5 years with Place, which was a fabulous, very innovative boutique brand in Brisbane. And most recently, I've joined the Blackshaw Group for a similar role where I'm transforming the property management business here from how it's operated to move it forward in a more, I guess, modern and collaborative way.
You sound like a transformational business coach to me.
Well, we might be. Well, I mean, I think every leader is a heart coach, aren't they? Because to get the best out of your team, you do need coaching them to be the best version of what they want to be. And I think that's where things have really shifted in particularly the last 3 years. So I think you have to be, as a leader, you have to be so individual in your approach to each person. The old way of the mandate or this size fits all approach is no longer, so the clear mind, clear operating style is pretty critical. So rhythms become critical, and it's been it's terrific to actually be in an environment now, whilst very young, as in I've only been here a little while. It's terrific to be able to apply some of those lessons in a new place like that, to help people forward. So yeah, it's exciting.
That's amazing. With such a stellar career already, and you've got a long way to go still.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's why we have filters on. Yes.
You've got wow, you've got so much to contribute to the industry, and you've already done so much. It's amazing. What those big organizations, what have you noticed about leadership in particular from when you started through those organizations to where you are now? Has there been much of a difference from your point of view or experience?
Yes. So without naming names, when I first started out, so let's just say that first 10-year period, I worked with some fantastic groups, like really all of them are great groups. But the style of operational leadership then was very mandate. It was a directive from the top. We were required to execute that, and the employee or the person in the property management lane, etc., they had to fit our way. Okay. Right. The style of operation now, and I really do think this is in the last 3 years in particular, do we say COVID? Maybe. I just think COVID exacerbated this. I think it was already forming this way, is definitely more consultative. It is far more agile. Words like pivot have become very, almost overused, but you do need to become like that. And taking people on that journey is almost the sole job of the leader. So, even here, I've already set up a PM council, for example, so that we can, collectively work together on building our Blackshaw way of property management. Whereas, in a previous role, that probably took us 3 years to realise we needed to do that, So I think that individual understanding is really important. You still have, I think, methods that are proven that you ideally in a business sense want to adopt, but to take people on the journey with you, you really need to tap into what motivates them. And that newer generation, and we've heard this before, have very different motivators to perhaps the older generation. And we use words a lot like respect, and I think these days being respectful of people is involving them in understanding, if not the decision making of what you do moving forward.
Yeah. Have you noticed much difference with women in leadership over the years?
It's a very good question. Yes, I have. I think it's only recently that women can demonstrate vulnerability and, dare I say, femininity. I think it's only recently that women have a voice that is treated with having an intellectual purpose, as opposed to perhaps what their physical, demonstration supports, or what society deems physically attractive. I've been in my early stages of leadership in rooms, truthfully, where some people in the room were watching porn on the meeting as opposed to listening to what the meeting was about. And this is a long time ago. I want to be really honest about that. But these days, I do find that women can definitely be an active, considered, credible part of any business. I'm not sure how I genuinely feel about things like quotas. I understand that they probably provide some clarity around opening people's mindsets, and perhaps that's the purpose of that. But ultimately, I think these days, with a genuine understanding of flexibility and a genuine understanding of what everybody can bring to the table, women have a really pivotal role to play, as do men. It's a collective. We do think differently. Men and women think differently. And I don't think these days women have to have that sort of hard operating style. You can move forward in a way where you are confident in what you bring to the table. And for the most part, businesses open with acceptance, as opposed to, judging you by whether you're a female or a male, for the most part.
Yeah, so there's been a big shift in that. What or how would you define leadership now in your current state? You, as a person who's had some great experiences in the business and in life, how would you define leadership?
I think leadership is a responsibility. It is a responsibility to grow other people. It's a responsibility to understand the dynamics of both the business and the individual and or team, and bring them together with a collective purpose. So you have a responsibility for that. And it doesn't mean you have to have all the answers, but you have to have an openness and an ability to tap into what everybody can bring to the table. And that might be internally, it might be externally. So that's the first thing, it's responsibility. I think the second piece, it's about awareness. And so that awareness to understand that you aren't the font of all knowledge. That's not what the leader is. In the old days, you looked to that person as, being the person to direct and guide and have all the answers. I think almost sometimes the best leaders now don't have any answers. They're the people that are kind of just, they're curious, and they're exploring and they're building. And I think the third piece is you're responsible, or it's really important that you bring a very positive energy to what you do. And there's a lot of things, you do a lot of work in this space, but there's a lot of things you need to do for yourself to bring that energy, and it could be everything from your daily rhythms, your exercise, your diet, your mindset. You are responsible for that energy, because people need that from you. It's people are at very different stages of their professional and personal growth, and they also have very different levels of motivation towards the level that they want to achieve. So energy is really, really key. I'm very conscious of that these days. I lead a very holistic lifestyle these days, and have come back, after I've been doing this for nearly 20 years, and I almost hate saying that, but I probably got more energy than I had than when I started. Just because you sort of find the love for it again, I think.
What's your style of leadership?
Yes, that's a great question. I think we all have innate styles, and we can all work on our innate styles. I'm a very decisive leader. I'm very focused on, I think, combined. I'm very efficiency orientated, but I'm smart enough to know you've got to take the people on the journey with you. I think in the old days, I would have been described as a mandating type of leader. So I walked in and I would say, this is how we're doing it. These days, I'm very conscious and much more prefer to go into something with look, this is what I would recommend. This is what I've learned from previous experiences, but how do you feel about X, Y, Z? You know, and then people will contribute to that. So I'm far less mandatey these days, much calmer. So yeah, but I'm decisive. Yeah, and I tend to come to an understanding and then genuinely make sure that everybody is a part of that, and then I try and influence the outcome to get it to that.
In all of that, what do you think your superpower is as a leader?
Influence.
Influence. Tell us more about
that. For whatever reason, I think it's a combination of experience and energy, and I like to have a bit of fun, and so people want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's that influence. Because I'm highly curious and I'm very motivated, people seem to respond positively on the whole to that energy, I think. So it seems to be something about my energy that I'm becoming extremely protective of. So I fuel it in very positive ways these days. But they want to be a part of that. And, I think ultimately, because I enjoy it and I have fun with it, as in doing the jobs, people kind of think, oh, so property management can be fun. Well, yes, it can. Like you can have a really good time with this. It's almost like the landscape's wide open to make a difference. And we've that whole traditional model of property management and even the businesses and how they're run, it's rapidly disappearing. And I love being a part of this group of people that's driving change in that space. And it's become more and more considered a business as opposed to, oh, I just fell into it because I didn't know what else to do. And I love being a part of that. So I think influence is probably the superpower.
Yes, it's very important. It's like John Maxwell's five pillars of leadership, and pinnacle leadership being the top one, where people follow you for who you are and what you stand for. And that's all about influence. On the other side, though, what's your Achilles as a leader?
Yes, I would say, and it's something that I keep at the front of my consciousness. Okay, so I'm aware of it. Because I'm so decisive, I might not always consider all options. Okay, so I'm conscious of that. Hence the reason I put mechanisms, I should say, in place now to make sure I don't do that. Councils, collaborations, lots of conversations, just to make sure we're all on the same page. But I can be so decisive that I might not hear somebody who has a softer voice.
Right.
So I'm aware of it.
Yeah. If you're comfortable with it, can you take us to a time in your life where you really were challenged and it was a struggle and you led yourself through that time? Is there a moment?
Yeah, no, I'm okay with that. I probably have two, and I would say they all happened in the last couple of years. One was, I'll give you three. On a personal level, probably the most difficult one was when my husband unfortunately was diagnosed with brain cancer. And so I was working in Brisbane at the time at Place, and we were in the middle of a number of rent roll acquisitions. He was sick for 12 months, so I was working in the business in a fairly, obviously significant role and a lot of pressure and so on. And then I was going home and caring for him. And I can barely remember that year, if I'm being honest. Like, it was so intense and I was so tired. Really, it was difficult. And we still continued. We bought 4 rent rolls in that year while I was nursing him. And then I did the last one while he was in palliative care. And I'm not necessarily saying that's a great thing to do, but it was just the timing. I'm sitting there on text on one hand and holding his hand on the other. And that was tough. That was really difficult. And when I came back to work after that, it took me a little while probably to refine my purpose, because you sort of lose this significant other. Because then I became not just the worker bee, but also I was the home looking after my then 18-year-old daughter, who had just lost, the most significant person in her life. So yeah, that was really tough. But the way I reset from that was starting with routine. So it was enough for me in a day. If I got up, obviously I would shower and what have you, and I would go to the office and I would spend the day in the office and I would come home. And if I did that in a day, I'd go, I've done my day. And then slowly I introduced exercise. And then after about 6 or 9 months, I started to socialize again. And I just let myself slowly wrap little routines in. So I am a firm believer, genuinely firm believer. Paul Curtin's a great example of this, of rhythms and routines. You know, they're your friend. They help you control your responses in your life. So that was a very significantly difficult piece. And then I'd no sooner sort of got through all of that, then I was diagnosed with breast cancer, which was obviously very confronting for my family after what we'd just been through. And that probably caused me to sit back and go, well, how do I want to lead my life? I was always lucky. It was never terminal. So, you know, it was just a bit of a wake-up call for me. And I'm certainly through the other side of all of that. But again, I looked at routine, I looked at rhythms, and I actually gave myself permission to, you know, we talk about authentic leadership. I think I gave myself permission at that point to go, well, what type of, you know, work do I want to do, and what type of lifestyle do I want to lead, and, you know, what is the culture that I, you know, personally want to be a part of moving forward for me, you know, in my career. So it certainly helped me do all of that. And, you know, I took sort of a sabbatical in my career, which I've never done in my life. Took 4 months off, spent a ton of money. I traveled, had a really good time. I went overseas 3 or 4 times. It was fabulous. I highly recommend it. And I think that, you know, I came back from that going, right, I'm ready to get my teeth back into something, you know. So it was, I think they were very challenging periods. I've had, on a professional level, I've had in my 20 years 2 instances where I've really been set back on my haunches, i.e. something has happened in a professional sense that I didn't anticipate, that was a very undermining, you know, type of experience. And they're really confronting when you're a particularly principled person, as I am. You know, I have very clear principles and I'm very authentic and I act with a lot of integrity. And I was quite taken aback with these 2 instances, 2 different environments, 2 different people. But I will say that if you have belief in yourself, you can come through any of that. And in both instances, they, you know, one was probably more significant than the other, but, you know, you could argue they might set you back in your career. But in both instances, I was able to overcome it and spend a lot more time in each environment with more successes with a team. So you've just got to believe in yourself and sometimes sit back and look at the situation and go, how else can I approach that? You know, because it's not a linear line to success, is it? It's a bit of a meandering road. It's up and down and back and, you know, all of those things. And so it's having that awareness, you know, that we talked about earlier is very important. But yeah, I think I genuinely think if I gave any advice to anybody, it would be who you want to be and live to your values, and everything else will come into play with that.
Yeah. On that note, what do you think leaders get right and leaders get wrong in the midst of crisis?
Yeah. I think a lot of what they get right in that I've experienced is they will look at the dollars and they'll look at the numbers and they will try and let's just say create a foolproof or perhaps they'll try and cover themselves or cover the business and look after as many people as possible for a period of time. Let's call it 3 or 6 months, whatever. I saw it distinctly in COVID. Okay. They do that right. What I've seen most or many leaders do wrong is most leaders, and I'm sorry to say I'm going to put CEOs in this, often can't handle noise from people that are maybe not demonstrating good core values. And so when there's a time of crisis, I see leaders move away from core values and protect the money. They protect the money. And you know, look, I think it's difficult. They have a dual responsibility. We've talked about that earlier, you know, all our leadership responsibilities, and they have a responsibility to look after people and look after the P&Ls and so on. But that sometimes there are behaviours that, let's call it the big fee writers demonstrate, that are not respectful or reflective of those core values. And I've seen it in several times, that behaviour be condoned. And in itself, that has a cultural, it's culturally deficient. and does impact culture. And good people lead for that, you know, and those leaders will never know what those people could have achieved because they've chosen something that's, you know, about the money as opposed to really about culture. So I think many leaders are culturally committed 80% of the time.
Yeah. Okay. On your travels throughout your leadership journey, has there been anybody or any book or anything you've learnt or person that you've seen or spoken to that's inspired you to be a better leader that you've learned from, that you looked up to along the way?
All of the CEOs I've worked with genuinely, I think are incredible leaders. It doesn't mean I think they're perfect people.
No.
I just think I've learned skills from every one of them, you know, whether it's how to be more strategic, whether it's the value of being liked as opposed to right, you know, and you know, the business acumen. I've learned something from all of them, you know. Like Paul Curtin, incredibly cultural leader, you know, Damien's extremely likable, Peter Hanscom's incredibly strategic, you know. I worked with Shane Smolin, who is incredibly instinctive. You know, I don't know if any other leader I've worked with is as instinctive as he is. So you learn something from all of them. They're amazing.
Is there anything that stood out that you still really lean on today?
I still have interactions with Damien. So I would say Damien and Peter Hanscom are probably the two that I have the most to do with. And, you know, they're the two that for different reasons, you know, assist me, you know, whether it's strategically or culturally. I spent, you know, 5 years working with Damien, as you know, and, you know, a couple of years working with Peter, but we've always maintained a good professional interaction. So runs a good business. There are different people in my world at the moment that I find really supportive. Scott Bateman, who runs Colmio, is incredible. I think he's highly strategic. Steve Carroll is just a beautiful human. He's given me a book that at the moment is my favourite book, which is The First 90 Days. And, you know, it's a book I'm reading at the moment as I'm, you know, obviously executing my first 90 days in this new role. So I think different people come to the fore and support you at different times. But I'm really fortunate. Over the years, I've worked with some incredible, both men and women. I mean, Sarah Dawson over at Property Me is incredible. She's a very strategic female operator. There's just so many of them, but they're probably the ones at the moment that I'm having a little bit more to do with. Yeah.
What do you absolutely love about leadership?
Every day is different. It's not a formula. It's just not a formula. So the first thing is, honestly, every day is different, and you've got to love it. Like, you've got to love it, because the minute you stop loving it, you stop being an effective leader.
Yeah.
You know, so if you need, like I did, I took, you know, a 4-month sabbatical. I did have some things I had to deal with, but I probably needed that sabbatical. You know, I probably needed to step away for 5 minutes. I still did a bit of consulting and training. So I also spent a lot of days, you know, potting my plants and, you know, those sorts of things. But I think you've got to love it. Otherwise, you can't be an effective leader. And as I said, every day is different. And I think the third thing, honestly, is the people. You have this responsibility, and it's actually a privilege to guide people that are quite new to what they do. I think never lose sight of that.
Yeah. Couple more questions. Thanks for your time. The future of leadership, what does it look like?
Yes, I think
if we've come from the mandated type to this,
it'll never go back to mandate, and it shouldn't.
Where do you think it's going?
Yeah, I think it's always going to be collaborative, consultative, adaptive. I think we're heading for potentially some more economically challenged times, and that will test leaders to make choices. I'm not sure if the leaders and I'm being a very gross generalization here. I think the future of leadership and the optimum leader of the future is the one who will balance culture and money, and who will make good decisions as opposed to just monetary decisions moving forward. And anybody who knows me knows I'm extremely commercial. Like, I am known for my property management commercial acumen. So for me to say that is just a distinctive position. But that is the I think the optimum leader of the next 3 to 5 years is that person who genuinely can balance those two things and who will make those hard calls where needed. I also think the next test of leadership is acting rather than spending so much time talking. You absolutely need to talk and understand and create, a path, no question, and you should litmus test that decision regularly. But there are a number of businesses. I mean, if anybody saw the Macquarie benchmarking of the last few weeks, there's a number of businesses that are entering this period, for example, with these higher than normal operating costs. But we've just come out of a time where people made more money than they knew what to do with. So how was that possible? Okay, so they didn't leaders did not make good decisions. They just rode the gravy train. And it's like, well, at some point you always have to keep a little bit of an eye on the future. So I think it is that balance of commercial and cultural, and it's also acting. Don't spend too long talking about it. You do need to make some decisions that keep you not mean, but operating lean so that you have the capacity to adapt. Because big opportunities will arise now, but everyone seems to have spent their money. So I don't know if everybody's going to take advantage of it.
What are you excited about in your new role at the moment?
Creating with the Blackshaw way, with a bunch of people that are genuinely wanting to go forward well. I've actually never struck an environment with less resistance, if I'm being honest. So this is it's really interesting. So that's what I'm most excited about. It's a big job. This is, when you're starting at the point that I'm starting with this team who are amazing, but some of what I'm doing is things that I did 5 to 7 years ago, just because that's the place we're starting, and that's okay. And then other things, because they operate with such heart, they're doing super well, So most excited to help them build an understanding of their property management business and then be able to balance good cultural decisions with good business decisions.
Yeah, love it. Just imagine you've got the platform to speak to every emerging leader in the universe right now. What are you going to tell them?
Enjoy what you do.
Yeah, I love it. Last question. Sum up leadership in one word.
Responsibility and privilege. Well, now I've given you two.
Yeah,
okay, I'm going to choose one. It's privilege.
Privilege. Okay. Cathie Crampton, you've been a stellar, incredible example of leadership on this call. I wish you all the best. I thank you for your time. And hopefully we can do this again a little bit further down the track and see where you're at in your leadership journey.
Thank you. Thanks, Jay.
There you have it, You Leadership with Cathie Crampton. A great session. If you've got any questions about leadership or you want to know more, please email me, jet@jetxavier.com, and I'm happy to have a chat. Other than that, have a great day. Cheers.